I actually missed story time last night. I got in here last night. But the stories before then were one, the wobbly lady, and two was the bouncy Santa Casa. The children, they make up a title every day in the evening, and I make up a story to go along with that. They have two children in the story, and as Juhi said, it has a moral always. I am just delighted to be here. My first association with Grace Hopper was back in 1997, and I'm revealing how old I am with that sharing. But I presented a paper at the second Grace Hopper celebration in San Jose, California. And, 15 years later, it is just truly an honor and privilege to be here in front of you doing this opening keynote. Thank you, Jagrati. Thank you, Anita Bog Institute, ACM, Juhi, for extending me this invitation. Thank you for your deep, long global commitment to women in computing. Telly, really appreciate your commitment coming down all the way from California to really make these connections. Thank you. I want to start by looking at the numbers. I think all of the speakers before me alluded to the numbers. They paint a vivid picture, and they tell us about the importance of gatherings, communities like this. A McKinsey report showed that in the West, women in top positions, executive positions, board positions, 10 to 20%, and that number hasn't changed over a decade. If you turn attention to India, the numbers are even more dismal, 3 to 6%. I thought to myself, surely technology must be a different world. After all, technology is such an equalizing force, being just a rising contributor to the GDP of India. But that hope was also dashed when I looked at the numbers. There was a forced study that even globally, the number of women CIOs today, 9%, down from 11% last year, 12% the year before, in the wrong direction. The numbers in India, PJ talked about the rising numbers of entry-level women engineers, and that's fantastic. But if you look at the top, again, 3%, and that number hasn't changed. It's those stats that make me want to come here and come share my story. What I'm going to talk about, a lot of it are things that you know about walking in the door. But if I can help reinforce a few beliefs, if I can help, drive one or two actions collectively, that's, several thousand actions, and we can make a difference. As I thought about the theme of this conference, Beyond Boundaries, I want to acknowledge that every single person in this room is here because you have put boundaries in one way or another. So for all the amazing technical women in this room and the amazing men without whom we couldn't do this without, give yourself a huge round of applause. There are many pieces of the puzzle that need to come together to make a lasting difference. At the very basic level, a poll of gender experts showed that among G20 countries, India ranks among the bottom. India is the worst country among G20 countries for women when it takes into account factors like safety, access to healthcare, access to education. Societal attitudes need to change. Companies are focused on corporate policies. Institutions are thinking about what changes they need to make. The government is looking at it. If any one of you are involved in any part of that ecosystem, any pieces of those puzzle, a huge thank you for what you're doing. All that you do is really important for lasting, holistic change. What I'm going to talk about in our next 20 minutes together are the things that each one of us can do. I firmly believe that each one of us have more power to change things than any one of us think possible. I'm going to talk about a topic that you will see listed on Facebook offices all across the globe. And the topic is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? The topic, the question is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? I want us to take 30 seconds to actually think about that answer because the answer is very individual for each of us. So if you have a piece of paper, if you have a smartphone, you can write down what comes to your mind so that you can think about it for the remaining 2 days and after you leave this conference. 30 seconds. As I said, the answer is specific. When I ask this question of various people, I get a range of responses. I have some people tell me that they would raise their hand and speak up more and not be afraid of looking stupid. I have others telling me that they would do something completely different from what they were doing today and not be afraid to fail. While the answer is individual and specific, I want to share my best advice on things that I have learned through my journey on getting to a place where you are doing what you would do if you weren't afraid. I have 4 pieces of advice to share with you. Number 1, dream big. I'll share 2 stories here, and the punchline of both of them is if I can do it, you can do it, and more. Story 1 is about my professional journey. How many of you know where Nanded is? Nanded, the place Nanded. Let's get a show of hands. Okay, about 10. It's famous for one thing. What is it? What is it? The Sikh Gurudwara. Indeed, it's the second largest one in India. That's where I did my engineering. My parents were there at that time, and as you can see, there's probably a handful of people who know where that is. My parents moved to Nagpur. I moved with them, and there I worked for Yashwant Kanetkar, the author of Let Us See. Again, a show of hands. How many of you know who Yashwant Kanetkar is? All right, that's like a good 70, 80%. If you take his book, Exploring Sea, you'll still see in the acknowledgements, the acknowledgement for Kirthiga for writing some of the original programs that went into that book. I worked with Kanetkar for a few years and then decided I wanted to study further, get my master's. I wanted to go abroad to do it. I spoke to my parents about it. I was the first person in my family to go abroad. And my dad beamed and he said, of course, matter of pride for the family that you are going to go abroad and get your master's. I went to my mother, and she said, of course, let's get married, and then you can do whatever you want. So I met my then fiancé, now husband, and we were engaged 4 days after we met in person. Ours was an arranged marriage, and we were married a year later. And if I then fast forward 8 years, I was the youngest director of engineering at Silicon Graphics, then a $2 billion, 9,000 people company, the only woman engineering director in my department. And then you fast forward another 8 years and many amazing associations, my MBA at Stanford Business School, Good Technology, Motorola, Phoenix, and then to the current role that I have the absolute privilege of doing. I was the first person, the first employee of Facebook here in India 2.5 years ago, and it has been a once-in-a-lifetime journey to be able to lead Facebook's operations, to be able to be part of a company that touches lives in such a fundamental way. If I can do it, you can do it and more. No matter what your background, where you come from, what institution you studied, think about any barriers that you are thinking about that you think limits you from doing what you want to do and dreaming big. And think about whether it's real barriers or it's just on your mind and push it hard. All right, I want to share my second story of Dream Big. Okay, Nima from eBay, PayPal can't answer this question, but for everybody else in the audience, do you know where these pictures are taken? All right. The base camp, indeed. So this was taken at the Everest base camp. It was the beginning of the year. I wanted to have like a big goal. My husband calls it my midlife crisis. I just turned 40, and a lot of that is true. I needed something like big, memorable that I would remember turning 40, something that was as intense, as memorable as what I do in my day-to-day. And I decided we're going to go to the base camp. I'm not a jogger, not a trekker, not a hiker. I don't know how to swim. So this was truly a stretch for me, both literally and figuratively. And I still remember the thrill of seeing the peak, the Everest peak, and that's the middle peak that you see in the first picture. And you're looking at it with naked eye and thinking, oh my God, this is the top of the world. I remember that thrill, and I remember getting to base camp. If I can do it, you can do it, and more. Dream big, dream bigger. If your dreams don't scare you, I would say that you're not thinking about your fullest potential. Dream big and go out there and make it happen. All right, advice 2. Focus on impact. This is a core Facebook value. It's one of 5 Facebook values displayed on our walls and something we truly internalize every day. The other 4 are move fast, be bold, be open, build social value. When I was named in the top 25 most powerful women in business list that Juhi spoke about, I had my team members ask me, they said, Kirthiga, did you always know that this was a career path you wanted to chart and your ultimate goal was to get on this top 25 list? And I said, of course. All right, I think everyone in this audience knows that the answer is, of course not. I was looking at the survey response from last year's Grace Hopper celebration, and what it showed was that for the students in the room, the biggest thing on their mind, 70% of them, it was about getting a good job. For women in industry, 63% said that they were coming to this conference and a primary was to figure out how is it that they get ahead in their career. Now, there are certainly people who know what they want to do exactly to the I's, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. I was not one of them. When I graduated, my goal was to get a good job. When I started working, I wanted to figure out how I learn, how I grow, and how I make an impact. My career thinking got more longer term, and what I wanted to do got more crystal clear as I went along, but it was certainly a journey. My managers taught me many things about what to focus on and what not to focus on, and I'm grateful to them. One of my early managers shared her formula of success, which has become a way of work for me. She said, Kirthiga, focus on the success of your customers, your organization, and your team. And your success is a byproduct. Your success is a byproduct. It was liberating, right? No longer is success about me, but success is about flipping the picture and thinking about how to make my customers, my organization, and the team successful. In the case of Facebook, it's about me thinking about how do I deliver more value to the people who use our platform, to the developers who are developing on Facebook, and to advertisers who are engaging, connecting with new and existing customers in ways that were not possible before. It's about thinking about my organization, the team that works with me, the team that works for me, and thinking about, again, their success. So if I want to get ahead in my career, if I want to do more, guess what I need to think about? I need to think about how I can make my customers, my organization, my team more successful, and in that lies my success. This principle is simplifying in so many different dimensions. For one, it lets you largely ignore job descriptions. You're doing things not bounded by job descriptions, but you're doing things bound by your own ability because you're thinking about what is it that you need to do for the success of these stakeholders. It gives us the spiritual strength to have those tough conversations with local, regional, global stakeholders show of hands, how many of you have had challenges in like working across stakeholders, trying to get ideas across, trying to get big things across? Yeah? And I have many people ask me, they said, Kirthiga, I don't know, I've asked them once, I've asked them twice, how much more should I push? And the simple principle is that, okay, think about what you're doing this for, think about how much you think it'll make a difference, and if you orient that way, the right message will come across. And it comes across that the reason that you're having this conversation is not because of you or because of the other person, it's again because you're following the right goals. It makes receiving feedback easier because you can interpret it in the same lens of how can you take that feedback and make this better. The fastest way to learn and to grow is to make yourself open to feedback, create that environment, be open to receiving feedback and acting upon it. Invest in the art and science of feedback. Focus on impact, focus on the success of your customers, your organization, your team. If you want to be more successful, think about how you can make those stakeholders more successful. Next item. Embrace the power of the and. And nothing stresses this principle more than major life changes, like marriage, and a step function more, having children. And it's really important to think about this because we have, you think about the stats, lots more women in technology, in engineering, entering the workforce. It's those years that you have almost a 50% drop-off, 50%. Even if you just fix that aspect, and I know many people are working on it, that's huge. So 3 thoughts on the different stages of life. Number 1, if you're in the category where you're thinking about getting married, know that one of the most important career decisions you will make is the partner that you will choose. I would not be here doing what I do if not for my husband, my soulmate, and how much he gives in understanding and supporting my dreams and my career goals. Okay, fast forward. If you are in the category where you're thinking about having children, I also want to share that if you're waiting for that ideal time where all the factors fall into place, the ideal time, there is never an ideal time to have children. Yeah? The beauty of that statement is that if there is never an ideal time to have children and you want to have children, it is always a good time to have children. So, if you're in that bucket, have children and everything, trust me, will fall into place. I'm not saying it's easy. I had my first child when I was in Stanford Business School, and I remember the first time I took her to daycare was when she was like a few weeks old, probably 12 weeks old. And I had tears streaming in my eyes. I have made decisions about like starting businesses, closing businesses, hiring people, letting people go, but by far, the hardest decision that I made in my life was a daycare that my child went to. I had tears streaming down as I handed Ashna over, and the caregiver, she looked at me and she said, okay, listen, the baby is going to sleep, eat, sleep again. She is going to be fine. You have to figure out what you do to make yourself fine. Okay? This is not about the baby. This is not about you. And that's how it turned out. When I had my second child, Arya, I was a director of product management, and I had another dilemma. My job needed me to travel, and on the other hand, it was really important for me to be able to nurse Arya for the first year, because that's what I had done with Ashna. Sleepless nights, what am I going to do? Is this the moment that everyone talks about where I have to make a choice? I have to make a choice between being an amazing professional or having to choose between being an amazing parent and doing what was most important to me on the family side. And then it dawned on me the power of the and. I said, I can do both. So for the first year, I traveled with her on business. And things just fell into place. I went to North Carolina, and one of my colleagues there, his wife happened to have a daycare center before. She said, I'll take care of her while you go to work. And something like that happened every single place. It is amazing how nature conspires to make things happen for you if you truly believe in what you want to do and want to make things happen. Embrace the power of the and. When you're faced with such situations where you're feeling that, oh my God, this is an or choice, it's one thing or another, I really want to try to do both. It could be personal, it could be business, where two business goals are presented as conflicting business goals. Step back and think about, oh, is this an or situation that really could be changed into an and? Are there creative ways to think outside the box and make both happen? I have applied this, I have seen other successful women apply this consistently in many situations. To me, another situation where this applies is also volunteering. To me, very important to give back to community. And when my second child was born, I said, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to figure out how I continue that part of my life? I have taken them with me since they were, again, several weeks old. They've gone to soup kitchens, they've gone to orphanages, they've done book drives, and this was when we were planting native saplings to just promote the group of that with an organization called Magic back in California. The power of the and is beautiful. I was able to work, I was able to have my child, I was able to continue my community work, and my children are that much better off because of that. Power of the and. Last one, lean in. I come back to the stats that I spoke about when we started. Look at India in the Asian countries. At the very bottom, when it comes to women's share in both executive committees, when it comes to the female labor force participation rate. We have to dream big, we have to believe in ourselves, and we have to lean in. The research is clear about this. Women systematically underestimate their abilities, and men systematically overestimate their abilities. When a woman looks at a role, she thinks about, oh my God, these are all the gaps that I have, and does not account for all of the things that she brings to the role. When a man looks at that, and this is research, you can see smiles. When a man looks at the role, he thinks about all the amazing things he has done that directly apply and doesn't even see the gaps. When women attribute their success to luck, to family, whereas men attribute that to themselves, their skill. They're awesome. Yeah? We have to be conscious of these differences. Negotiating, another example. A study showed that 57% of men graduating from college negotiated. The stat for women, 7%, single digit. We talk about the wage gap, and you think about whose fault is it? As a manager, I'm not like deliberately out to pay a man more than a woman, but if 57% men ask and 7% women do, what does that result in? I'll be very clear. I have been in situations like this too, where I'm like, all right, am I really going to go and ask for that extra 5%? What? I'm so excited about what this is about. I don't want them to think that it's about the money and not the opportunity. But no, and after all, I'll think, it's just 5%, or it doesn't really matter. When you think about the compounding nature of the impact, it does matter. It could mean that you retire several years earlier than you would. It could mean that you have a different lifestyle than you would. It does matter, so think about it. Believe in yourself, lean in, but also know that there's something contraindicative that's working for us in that success and likability is positively correlated for men and negatively correlated for women. And it plays out in a bunch of different dimensions. If I continue with the example of negotiating, when a man negotiates, he's seen as a smart business professional. When a woman negotiates, truly, they look at it and they say, is the money bigger than the job? Is she a team player? So Margaret Neal, who's a professor at GSB Stanford, she does a lot of gender research, and she gave this little tip. She said, listen, try to make the gender stereotypes work for you. You can, when you're negotiating, talk about how really love the opportunity. It's not about the money, but it is important that you're paid competitively, and You have a parent to take care of, children to take care of, a husband's investment. So bring the stereotypes in you, and then suddenly it all becomes okay. Yeah, we know why she's asking. Okay? Things have changed. I'm not saying things have not changed. If I take just my own story, my mother did not finish her high school degree. After 6th grade, 7th grade, it was really hard for her to continue to study further because her parents said, you know enough maths to do the laundry and the grocery bill. You don't need to study any further. She is very proud of what we have done and what we collectively in this room represent. I'm sure she's watching our live stream, even this talk, and I just love both of them. Love you, Mom. Love you, Dad. So I recognize that things have changed, and it also places a huge responsibility on each one of us in this room to leave it that much better for the next generation. There is a lot that needs to change. I'm excited about where we are. I'm excited to see the multi-generation workforce that's represented even in this room and in every single company. The Gen Y is an amazing, amazing group. Right? They come with a lot of energy, values-driven, need to know the why, peer-oriented, 1.7 billion people all across the world, 25% of the world population. I'm excited about what Gen X, which is where I fall, can do to really push boundaries, and I'm excited about what the Gen Y will do to push that even further. I would love for us to think about those 1 or 2 actions that each one of us are going to do, to dream big, to focus on impact, to really embrace the power of the and believe in ourselves and lean in. I want to leave us with one story. As I was going around and asking this question, what would you do if you weren't afraid? One of my good friends, few months ago this happened, she said, Kirthiga, I already do what I would do if I weren't afraid. And I looked up and I asked her, I said, wow, tell me why, tell me how, and what would you have not done that you're now doing? So she talked to me about her story, and she went through and suffered life-threatening cancer a few years ago. And that gave her a lot of time to reflect and a lot of time to think about what she wanted to do. And when she emerged from that, she decided that she would do what she would do if she weren't afraid. For her, that meant not to pursue the family business that was a predestined journey, and instead she returned to pursue a career with her alma mater. I want to urge all of us to not wait for life-changing events. Life's too short. Let's go out there and let's do what we would do if we weren't afraid. Thank you. I think we have time for questions, or yes? Okay. Questions? What's on your mind? Is there a mic running around? There's one question here on the second row. If you could say your name, where you come from, and your question, that would be lovely.
So my name is Ekta. I am working with 24/7 into their data division. My question is, and this is something that I face very often at work, is what is exactly the difference between being aggressive, being agile and dynamic, and being over pushy? And where do you draw that line? Because I think most of us in our work, because we have this stereotype image of women being soft, being gentle, tend to be perceived as, being over pushy. So when you stop and, when you make it a part of your own body language and when you communicate with your peers? So that's my question.
Great question. And I think it touches upon both the stereotypes associated with men and women, and I think it touches upon just the brief engagement we had around working and influencing stakeholders. So again, I think the question for those of you who couldn't hear was, what's the line? What's the line between being assertive and being seen as aggressive, overbearing? And how do we make that happen? Are we being seen as too soft? And again, how do we overcome that? Is that a right summary? Yeah. I will go back to some of the things that we spoke about, right? You have to draw that line, and you have to really try to understand different styles. I think one of my biggest learnings over the last year has been just that investment in understanding different styles. What is my style, and what is the style of the people that I work with? There are some people, typically, if you're working with someone who's just like yourself, that's like an instant chemistry and instant connection. They know where you're coming from, and you go. You work with someone who has a different style, a different behavior, the interpretation can be very different. And I've seen this happen in a whole bunch of different areas. So one of the things that I would really urge you to do, and urge the audience to do, is to, one, invest in knowing thyself. We spend a lot of time at Facebook, for example, doing Myers-Briggs, during colors, during strengths finders, so that we know who we are and how we are coming across. For all of the key stakeholders that we work with, again, I invest in knowing the different styles of the people who report in directly to me. So, and I'll tell you, and I'll extrapolate your question a little bit. With one person I could be working, I could be making changes, and that person would be completely in sync with me. And they would say, great interaction. I'm working with another person, I'm having the same interaction, and she's thinking, oh my God, why are we changing things at the last minute? Why couldn't we have planned this better upfront? So just knowing those different styles and knowing how you're being received is something you want to invest in, something you want to have conscious conversations about, and make sure that the wavelength you're wearing from one person to another. So one, think about what you're trying to achieve. Do not shy away from having a conversation because you're worried about the perception of being seen assertive, aggressive. I've also learned, by the way, personally, to recognize cues of when the other person may be taking it that way, and I've had follow-up conversations with them saying, hey, listen, I might have come across as aggressive, but really this is my goal. I didn't mean it personally, this is my goal, and it's really important for me to invest in that relationship with you. So go out there, have those conversations, know individual styles, it really makes a difference, and think about the goal, and adapt your method to it. Does that help? Okay. I think we'll go section by section so that we have enough people. Charita.
Hi, Kirthiga. Fascinating talk, thank you. What would you do if you weren't afraid?
What would I do if I weren't afraid? Yeah. It's a great question. And frankly, I'll tell you, when I do these talks, I'm giving these messages as much to myself, because there are times when I doubt and I say, really, am I right for this opportunity? I haven't done this, I haven't done that, and I discount all the things that I haven't done. So what would I do if I weren't afraid? I would probably push the bar, and so I would say that I do that exercise where I say, okay, am I dreaming big? Am I dreaming bigger? Every time I come to these conferences, I go through that exercise. I say, okay, I need to have bigger goals. So you inspire me as much as I hope that some of these lessons are valuable to you. So I do this regularly, and I go back with bigger dreams. I would probably say no to a few more things than I'm saying now, and actually, again, refocus my investment in a few things that I want to get further on, and not be afraid of saying, okay, what's going to happen if I drop these things? Because I then have the comfort that I'm doing this for higher priority items, and that's where I want to make the bigger impact. So that's probably my takeaway as I go away for the one or two actions that I will take away from my talk. And just on that note, I'll just add, as I talk about impact, it's way better to do 1, 2, 3 things really well, make a disproportionate impact, than do 10 things where you don't move the needle. If you want to move ahead in your career, think about your strengths, where you can make that disproportionate impact. Don't worry about, again, 10 things where you don't make a needle. Yes. I'm just going to, 2 more questions. Okay.
First of all, thanks a lot for that absolutely wonderful, straight from the heart talk. I have just posted about you on Facebook, and the fact that, I've been hearing this, conversation.
All right. My question is... Thank you for being a Facebook user.
Thanks. My question is this. So you spoke about the big role that your spouse had to play in your career, and the fact that probably his presence led to the fact that you didn't take a break in your career. I assume you haven't taken a break in your career.
I have not taken a break in my career.
So I also want to know what was the role that organizations that you worked for played in ensuring that you stayed on in a career in spite of managing your family and small children and everything that you did.
So just so I understand, what did the organization do, or what do I think they should do? What did they do?
What did they do?
Yeah. So when I so what did organizations do? So a couple of examples. I was at a startup when I had my second child, and we didn't have like a mother's room where again that I could pump milk and have milk for the baby. So I was the first one to have a baby in that company. So we created a mother's room. It so happened that it was right next to the CEO's room. The walls were very thin. I could hear the CEO's conversation, and I'm sure he could hear me in the mother's room. Okay, so just jumped out at me. But organizations have responded, and the biggest thing that I needed to do was to actually ask. If I hadn't asked and I said I'm going to just figure it out and it's not important to me, that would not have happened. So the biggest thing is ask. So that's one example. At Facebook, Cheryl talks about this, Cheryl, the CEO of Facebook, where she talks about leaning in and don't leave before you leave. Make decisions that makes things work for you. We have had, just in Facebook India, I think we have had 5 women who, when they were interviewing with us, were expecting. They were having amazing jobs, and I'm sure they were thinking, is this really the right time to make a change? And what we urge people is that you want a job that's really compelling and really exciting when you have a baby. Because if you don't, you're going to weigh off, okay, my job is not that exciting, not that interesting, do I really need to come back to it? So, again, two sides of that, right? One is as what should you be doing when you're thinking about such transitions? 2, from a company perspective, we encourage that, and we said, welcome, we will make it work for you. They went on maternity like probably 6 months after we made it work for them. We think about providing an environment for men and women in all that we do. Our product is an amazing enabler. We have a strong philosophy of bring your whole self to work, both work and life. I know about what's going on in my colleagues' life, both here as well as globally, more than I would in any other company across the globe. And so just that concept of bringing your whole self to work. We have initiatives too, and they, to me, are the topping, the cream, but you just have to fundamentally integrate that thought of how do we make it easy for women to continue during those critical years into everything that we do in addition to the initiatives. And those are some of the things that have been done.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
a lot.
Last question. I think we're going to go to the very back. Whoever at the very back has a question.
I'm already standing.
What was that?
I'm already standing.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, Kirthiga. This is Ekta from Qualcomm. So I have a question from the and thing that you said. So we have this, I love my job and I give my 100% into it. And then suddenly I think that, okay, I have a bigger dream and I have to go for it. And then this family thing also comes into picture. So how actually, being a girl, a person can manage all the things and give 100% to it?
Yeah. So, number one, ruthless prioritization, right? Really think about what is going to matter, and think about what you're going to say no to. This was a question asked about again, what would I do if I weren't afraid? I would say no to more things. So one, really think about what matters and what will make a difference. I went through this phase even 6 months ago where I was feeling terribly guilty that I have no clue, I'm sorry to admit it, about what's going on in the children's school. I have no clue what they're studying, what their homework is, and that's because my husband takes care of it, right? And I went through this period of, okay, I really should know. But then I stepped back and I said, okay, listen, I either need to feel, if I'm feeling guilty about it, I either need to do something about it or not feel guilty about it, right? And then I said to myself, really, they don't need two parents to help them with their homework. We'll just confuse the heck out of them. He's doing it, he's doing a great job. It's really important to me to take them out on things like the community work. I had a commitment to complete 40 hours of community work with my girls this year, and I finished that 2 weeks ago. So really thinking about what are the 2-3 things that are important to you and that will make a difference, being comfortable with what you're not going to do, and the not list will tear at your heart. It will be really important things where you say, how can I not do that? But putting that explicitly on the not list for the cause of what you want to do and making it work. And I would say that, think about that for your work, think about that for your family, of if there are 5 things that you can do, what are the 2 things that I think are really important for you, and make sure the community around you understands why you're doing it. Conversations, again, my family, my children know that they're here and they probably listen to my talk a few times while we're in car conversations and the like. So make sure they understand why you're doing it. They will be more supportive, get their buy-in, have your not list, and go out there and do it. It is not easy, but it is possible. And we need everyone in this room to go try and to go make it happen. Thank you for your questions. I know there were a number of other hands. I am here for a few more minutes, and I know there's an amazing lineup of speakers. I am just thrilled about seeing this community of amazing women in computing. At the end of the day, it also is all about people and the community that you leverage off of. Take advantage of this community, this global community, and the many other communities that you're part of. Go out there and do what you would do if you weren't afraid. Thank you. Okay?